Welcome to the Austin Audits pre-show. So what you're about to see is a analysis of the local media coverage of the City of Buffalo mayor's race, as well as a Austin Audits analytical deep dive into Erie County sales tax.
Twitch has accepted the stream.
That's great news.
YouTube has accepted the stream. Facebook has accepted the stream. Do you want me to turn the light down on your face so you're not washed out?
I think it looks, yeah, edit as you see fit.
You want me to do that? Is that a yes or no?
No.
No, okay. You don't mind being the washed out?
It looks okay on the screen here.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so we have audio. All we got to do is start the timer, and you start your show. Did you check the sync just now?
Yeah.
And it's okay?
Good. Yeah.
All right, here we go. When it says on the air, you're on the air.
Sweet. Thank you.
Oh, wait, I'll give you a countdown. You deserve a countdown,
Oh,
buddy.
Well, thank you.
Okay, here we go.
That's actually the best bit of my last show, because I was like singing and then it broke to the timer that I just started.
Oh.
So maybe I'll try to do that this time. Hello, Think Twice Radio, and welcome to another episode of Austin Audits. I am the lead auditor, Matthew Austin, and welcome to my show. So today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the mayor's race, and specifically some of my perceptions around just the local media coverage of the current mayor's race. We're about a little over a week now into the petitioning season, and then we're also going to be, the big segment today that I'm going to do is an analysis of the county's sales tax agreement with the city. So it's an agreement, and it's a large and major source of revenue for the city of Buffalo. But I think, especially with the concerns around the budget, understanding the sales tax agreement that the city has with the county is very important. And at the end, I'm going to provide maybe a little bit a vision or maybe a North Star of how I'd like to see maybe one candidate, at least in the race, work towards perhaps building up Buffalo as maybe the new financial capital of New York State. So that will be more towards the end. And for those of you that missed last week's show, last week I had the opportunity to interview mayoral candidate Michael Gaynor. So that show is now on my website. So if you go to I have a website now. So if you go to opendatamat.com, you can find links to my website. So I have the episode for my interview with mayoral candidate Michael Gaynor, and I encourage all city of Buffalo voters to check out that interview. I think Michael Gaynor is a very credible candidate in my eyes. Maybe not so much in the mainstream medias, but I think he has good experience and bring a fresh perspective, and definitely would be a different type of candidate. But I think he has. I think he'd be a good mayor. And I'd check out that interview with him, and also his social media page, and then also I have links here to my other shows. So I have the one where I did Kensington ruling and Bray Miller, and about the tax increases and sewer fund waste, and I'll be updating the site with my shows as I produce them. So that's kind of that. The first topic I wanted to cover was the media coverage of the mayor's race. And I think I'm going to be doing a segment here because I was kind of telling my friend, talking to them about the mayor's race, and I was kind of just explaining my perceptions of how the media coverage is, and they thought it would be a good idea for me to, as someone that's not as plugged in, follows politics, but isn't as plugged into the mayor's race, kind of my perception. So the person there that's playing is a Channel 4 interview with Jeremy Zellner, who is the Erie County Democratic Committee's chairman, as well as the Erie County Board of Elections commissioner. And he came on, I think it was the Thursday before the ECDC, or the Erie County Democratic Committee endorsement, and essentially came on and said they were going to endorse Sean Ryan. And also, kind of why I'm bringing this up is he's right here, right? He came on Channel 4, and the Channel 4 anchor David Gruber, I believe his name is, who's actually interviewing him here. He was also the debate moderator of the third ECDC mayoral forum. And I just think it's, at least as I've been following, right, there's lots of candidates in the race. We see, obviously, the endorsed Democratic candidate, Sean Ryan. But I just think it's been interesting kind of what candidates get coverage on Channel 4, and as well as which ones don't. So even, I've just been following articles and news, and whenever they reference kind of candidates in the race, they'll always mention kind of the front runners, right? Sean Ryan, acting Mayor Scanlon, Rashid Wyatt, and Garnell Whitfield even sometimes, although sometimes he's left out. But I just do think it's interesting, especially recently the big news we had was that James Gardner, so the Erie County Republican Committee endorsed a candidate for the first time in a while. And as soon as that announcement came out, James Gardner was on Channel 4. And I just think some of my perceptions is, I don't know, kind of this, what I'm talking about might get twisted, because obviously we have kind of, I think we're going through a revolution, right, where kind of, right, the legacy 247 news stations, right, they had a monopoly on the media. And I'm not accusing Channel 4 of I don't know what I'm accusing them of. I just think it's interesting what candidates do and which candidates don't get any coverage, because we have a slew of, I'll call them alternative candidates, or maybe not traditional candidates. I think Michael Gaynor being one of them. But there's a whole host of other candidates, and really the only that don't get any mention at all. And really the only difference between some of the alternative candidates is that they're just not traditional, right? They're not traditional politicians. They're not, they don't have essentially the resume, quote unquote. But I do think a lot of them have good in perspectives. And in my perception, I think one of the things I want to do with Austin Audits is kind of highlight some of the alternative voices, or some of maybe the non-establishment characters or candidates we have in this race. I mean, right now, there's at least 9 candidates that have declared and are actively collecting signature. And I feel, especially now that we have kind of this opening in the mayor's race, it's really important that we hear from all angles, because I think some of the alternative candidates might have good ideas. And yeah, I just think, right, and I don't know, the way Channel 4 specifically seems to be kind of covering is almost they're covering it as if it is a presidential election, which I get it. They kind of have the flashy graphics and, right, the endorsed candidates. But I would just like to see a kind of more holistic and really highlighting some of just the alternative candidates that aren't getting as much credit, which kind of brings me to my next point, is that actually on Wednesday at the Meriwether Library, there's going to be a Buffalo Mayoral Forum and an East Side Agenda Town Hall. So I think this is an exciting opportunity, because at least to my knowledge, I think today was the deadline to apply, but all of the candidates, or a lot of the candidates for mayor, are actually going to be attending this. It's more of a community in East Side Town Hall, which it's more activist ground, kind of a more community feeling. I think today, officially, acting Mayor Scanlon did RSVP, because it was very unclear whether he was going to show up. But I think, right, we just kind of, as we're starting petitioning, we just kind of ended the Erie County Democratic Committee's endorsement process. That was put on by the party, which is, the Erie County Democratic Committee. And I think now that petition is starting, and I'm really kind of excited for this next phase of the race. I know during the Michael Gaynor show, I kind of talked about the mayor's race as a hockey game. So we are right. The puck has dropped. We're in the first period. And I'm really excited for this next period of the race, where I think you're going to start seeing more open discussions, more actual debates and forums hosted by a whole slew of community groups. I know this East Side Agenda Town Hall is sponsored by the East Side's Collaborative Partnership and We Are Women Warriors. And they're putting on this forum. It's really, community driven. I think that's really exciting to me, because I think there's a lot. I think the 3 mayoral forums that we had by the ECDC, those were not open to the public. Those were only open to elected committee members who are kind of selected by the party and are kind of, the party insiders. Not that they don't represent, the people of the city, but I'm really excited for kind of this open process where this forum's open to anyone. Anyone can show up. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited. I'll be in attendance. And I encourage all City Hall voters or City of Buffalo voters, not just those that live on the east side, to perhaps attend. And I mean, whether you live on the east side or not, what happens on the east side affects us all. I kind of, one of the things that just seems to be in the culture of Buffalo politics. I don't know if Buffalo politics, but the city is just, there's really like, everyone kind of sticks to their side. So it's like east side's there, I'm over here, we're in our pockets. And I think you see this a lot reflected in the Common Council, where Common Council members really just stick to their districts. This is my district, that's your district. When in fact, like a lot of our districts are kind of gerrymandered, fake geographies that no one actually identifies with. And I just think, even with the Kensington, right, I think there's a lot of, right, obviously it directly impacts people that live on Humboldt Parkway on the east side, but it's a city issue. It affects everyone in the city. If you contribute to the tax base of the city, it affects you. So I'm really excited for this topic, and I'm really excited to hear in person from some of the alternative candidates. I'm trying to think of a better term because I don't like the term alternative. It makes it seem, I mean, I'm a music kind of person, and I've been called edgy by some people, so I like the term alternative, but I think alternative can kind of be a little derogatory of because they are credible candidates, right? They're circulating petitions, following election law, just like the endorsed candidate. So I'm really excited to hear. I know James Payne, who is a community activist, and I can barely find any information about him online, but I'm really excited to hear some of his thoughts and some of his ideas, because he's really from that Jefferson area and is kind of a community activist. And while he was on stage during the Erie County Democratic Committee, he really didn't have much of a mic share. So I'm really excited for this. I mean, James Payne is a alternative candidate that I'm excited to hear about. Obviously, Michael Gaynor, who was on last week's show, will be there. We have candidate Maggie Harder, who is an East Side activist and has done a lot of activist work through Farmers Pirates, through Occupy Buffalo, and has some good ideas, especially around Buffalo Coin, which is a newly emerged cryptocurrency in Buffalo, and some other ideas around housing. Also, council member Rashid Wyatt, who is kind of an outsider on the council, but also a little bit of an insider because he's on the council, will be there. And yeah, just really excited to have, as well as acting Mayor Scanlon and Sean Ryan. And I'm really excited that both of them RSVP'd, and as of this recording, planning on attend, because I'm interested to see how acting Mayor Scanlon and Senator Sean Ryan kind of operate in this area where they're definitely not on their home turf. This will be an away game. And I don't know that if I like the term away game, but right in the ECDC forums, that's right. The audience is curated. The questions are curated. Everyone in the room kind of thinks, like the establishment characters. And I think right in this forum, in the Frank Merriweather Library, where it's open to anyone, anybody in Jefferson can walk in and ask a question. We're really going to get a sense of the spirit and kind of the actual meat and potato of some of these candidates. These aren't curated questions, and really excited to hear some of the topics, especially the Kensington. I know as someone that's really pro Humboldt restoration, and that topic, while it was brought up, but kind of reluctantly, I expect the Humboldt restoration to be a major issue on a topic, let alone lots of other questions. I think the East Side, and even right, we saw Governor Hochul and kind of some of the establishment elected officials tried to rebrand the East Side into East Buffalo because they thought the East Side was kind of offensive because it's, why isn't there other terms? So they kind of rebranded to East Buffalo. And yeah, I think it's really the key to our city in a lot of ways, right? It's kind of this geography that has been kind of ignored and has some issues, but also is not as a monolith as maybe it's reported to. The East Side is a collection of its own neighborhoods and areas, and really excited to have a forum where specifically the East Side issues are brought up by members of the East Side community. And when I was talking with my friend about politics, I was kind of trying to think through in this mayor's race the different factions, and I think right, obviously the South Buffalo faction is its own political force, right? You have lots of City Hall workers. Not saying everyone that lives in City Hall is lives in South Buffalo, but the majority of City Hall workers live in South Buffalo, and that's traditionally its own very strong political bloc. And obviously with Acting Mayor Scanlon being the representative of the South District, that's kind of one cohort that I see as kind of a really powerful force is going to determine the outcome of this election. Then obviously you have the endorsed State Senator Sean Ryan, who, while he represents areas of Amherst, Tonawanda, is kind of North Buffalo, a little bit of the west side, progressive parts of the city. That's kind of another base. And also, I'd love to see the east side become its own political force, have its own kind of base. And I think one of the issues I'm concerned is that since there are so many candidates in this race, you might have, power, and I don't know the term power is the right word, but you might actually see the factions of the east side, splitting their votes, which would lead to some sort of just kind of lessens the power versus being in alignment. I think that's one of the reasons the east side has struggled in politics, is just it's such a large area and has very common issues and problems facing there, but it's also not wholly united, and that hasn't necessarily always been the truth, but at least recently I think I would love to see the east side get some representation in the mayor race. And I do think we do have some candidates. I know Garnell Whitfield, who I didn't mention earlier, but will also be there, is definitely from the east side and speaks for that part of town. Yeah, just overall excited for the Buffalo Mayoral Forum and East Side Agenda Town Hall. And I guess just to give some more information, here's kind of a flyer. So the Buffalo Mayor Forum and East Side Agenda Town Hall, it's going to be moderated by Sherry Sherrill and Mr. Austin Martin. The event's going to run from 5 p.m. to 6:15 p.m. There will be a town hall followed by a forum from 6:30 to 7:45. So almost 3 hours of actual mayoral forum. So, and then it's sponsored by Woman Warriors, and it's at the Meriwether Library at 1324 Jefferson, so the corner of Jefferson and East Utica. Is the event, and all candidates are welcome and have been invited. And to my knowledge, all have RSVP'd yes. Whether they showed up, I guess we'll see. You'll have to show up to see if they find out. But very excited for this event, and I encourage all city voters to start getting informed on the race and show up, even if you don't live on the east side. I encourage everyone to attend and learn more. So to recap, just my perceptions are that the mainstream media, 2, 4, and 7, all of them in their coverage have kind of, and I don't want to say the bias, but aren't giving voice much to some of the non-typical candidates. And I would love to see some of those candidates get more cred, which is kind of going to be a part of Austin Audits. I'd love to have some of the other candidates on the show. And then first opportunity to have kind of experience all the candidates, and really the first open forum that I'm aware of for City Hall voters is Wednesday at the the Meriwether Library on the corner of Jefferson. So that's kind of the first segment of the show. The second segment of the show, let me get set up here. But I really wanted to do a deep dive into sales tax, which could be boring, but I think I'm going to try to make it interesting. And I think it is very important because essentially, here we go. So really, I think, at least in my eyes, the number one issue in this mayor's race, and I think the most immediate term, short term, really challenge facing the city and any mayor that comes into office is the city's budget. The city has been kicking the can down the road for years and decades now, and it feels like this is finally going to be the time where things have to change radically. And I think it would be radical to keep doing what we're doing and expect more. And I think essentially kind of what we're in this weird moment where we have this acting mayor. So we don't have a mayor. The mayor's office is vacant. So because we have no mayor, those powers and duties go to someone who's acting. So you can think of it as almost like a babysitter, right? Your babysitter, they're not the parents, but because the parents are not there, they have the powers and duties to discipline and to act as a parent. So we're really in this weird time in Buffalo history where we have, not only do we just have an acting mayor, because it's very odd to not have an mayor, but the duration of the term, right? So acting Mayor Scanlon will be the acting mayor for, I think it's almost 18 months, which was most likely done, right? It was kind of it was done intentionally, right? Byron Brown waited to step aside until after a deadline, because if he had done that, I think a month before, then we would have had an actual election, a special election this past November, and we would have a duly elected mayor. So I think we're in this weird moment of time with this mayor's race, but I think even weirder is the budget. The budget is kind of the elephant in the room. And you'll hear the media, talk about the budget issues, which are absolutely true, but really the nuts and bolts of the budget are immense and don't get the coverage that they do. So I think, and I think the current administration, the acting administration, they've been on the record in council chambers as well as in the New York State Legislature of saying the city of Buffalo does not have a cost issue. This is a revenue problem, which is true, right? When you budget, you have revenues and expenses. And I think to say that we don't have a cost issue is kind of a little bit misleading, right? We had recently, or I think it was over a year now, the investigative post found that there was a clerk on the payroll in the city's fire department for over 7 years and collected, I think, nearly $600,000. So that was kind of an oopsie moment of, right, how did you have one person on the payroll that wasn't working for City Hall? And if there's one, that means that there could be others, right? So I think, right, that's just one example of, right, there's a cost, $600,000 in costs. And yeah, cost is an issue, and I'm going to get deeper into cost, but I wanted to focus on kind of the revenue side, because it is true. The city of Buffalo does not, right? It's a budget issue, and the budget issue is both revenues and costs. And I wanted to dive a little bit into the county sales tax. So the county sales tax is a major portion of the city's budget. So I wanted to dive deeply into kind of give context there so that it can kind of help inform the mayor's race. Because I would love to see a mayor take a position. In fact, I think they do need to take a position negotiating a new contract with Erie County. So let's dive into that. So let me pull up some documents here. So I think where should we start? I think the place to start is with this graph. So this is from the actual Erie County sales, or from the Erie County budget. But yeah, this breaks down the budget, right? So the 2025 budget, this is Erie County. So essentially there is over $1 billion of sales tax revenue. So this is every sales transaction in Erie County. There's over $1 billion in revenue. So $585 million of that is retained by Erie County, and the rest is shared with cities, towns, villages, and school districts. So there's the distribution formula, right? So how did they come out with this number? So a general sales and compensating use tax of 8.75% is levied on all taxable retail sales in the county, right? So this is if you spend a buck at Tim Hortons, right? You spend $1 and it ends up being, $1.09. That's where that 9 cents or 8.75 is the sales tax. So of the total 8.75% tax collected by New York State, 4% is retained as state revenue and 4.75% is returned to the county. In accordance with the sales tax sharing agreements, the 4.75% returned to the county is divided between the county and the cities of Buffalo, Lackawanna, and Tonawanda, the towns, villages, and school districts, and the NFTA, with the county retaining approximately 55% of the total, right? So the way sales tax, at least from my understanding, works in New York State is, right, 4% goes to the state, and then I think most other counties have another 4%, or it depends on counties, is retained by the county. Right, so this is the sales tax sharing agreement. So sales tax sharing formula, right? So the sales tax is 8.75%. So 4% right at the top goes to the state. So that leaves 4.75% of sales tax dollars to stay within the county. So this table is about, it's about how that money is distributed. So of the 4.75 retained by the county, it's really broken up into, right, 3%, then the next 1%, then the next 0.75%. So the first 3% of that 4.75%, this is how it's divided up. So the county of Erie gets just over 31%. Then the NFTA, which is obviously the Metro Rail, the buses, kind of the regional transportation, gets 4.16%. School districts get 29%. And then cities, so the cities of Buffalo as well as the cities of Tonawanda and Lackawanna, they divide up 10% of that, which is apportioned based on their population. And then 25.6858%. I'm curious how do these fourth place decimals, right, when they're negotiating, do they stick between 0.59 and or in this 8? But 25.6858% goes to towns and villages, and within those towns and villages are the cities. So the cities get their own city cutout, but then also they're part of the towns and villages and cities that is then again appropriated by population. So that's the first 3%. So then that's 3%. Then the next 1% of the 4.75% is this agreement where 100% of that goes to Erie County, less $12.5 million. So 12.5. So the first, $12.5 million of the additional 1% in sales tax goes to town and villages, and I'm assuming part of that is Buffalo, and then that extra 0.75%. So that goes 100% to the county of Erie. So that kind of makes up the distribution of the 8.75 county tax, right? So to summarize there, we each pay, right? When we're buying things, we each know that we, pay 8.75% to sales tax. So that sales tax, right, goes to a combination of the county, the metro, and towns and villages. And this is kind of our formula, Erie County's formula for divvying that up. And you'll see here that 1 and 2, it mentions that these 1% and this 0.75%, those sales tax authorizations expire this November. So late November. My understanding is that those were temporary, right? Temporary add-ons that need to be reauthorized by the legislature. So those look like they expire at the end of the year. I guess there's been some, right? This is an issue. This all goes back, like, where did you get these numbers from? And actually, from my understanding, this is actually rooted in the 1977 sales tax agreement. So actually, I believe there's this sales tax agreement that goes back to 1977 that the county of Erie, along with the city of Buffalo, city of Lackawanna, and Tonawanda, signed on that essentially divvied up our sales tax. But I think the 1% and 7.75% were actually added on later. So, right, this agreement goes. This was, I think January, or no, this was 1977. So this was December 1977. This agreement was made. And this is the agreement, to my knowledge, still governs how the county divides up sales tax. This is the document. And essentially, so why does this matter? That's kind of how we, Erie County, the city of Buffalo, divide up the sales tax. But I think it's important to know that that's just our county. So other counties in New York State, they have different sales tax rates. So actually, let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, but actually, right here is a graphic of all the sales tax rates in New York State by county. So actually, every county has their different sales tax rate. And actually, Erie County, which is here, this 8.34%, is actually tied for highest in New York State. So all these different counties have different tax rates, and all those tax rates are different, have different agreements, except for across all of them, 4% default goes to New York State. So that's kind of the situation of each county has their own agreement of how they split up the money with, right, depending on their geography, cities, whatnot agreement. I think, at least when it comes to Buffalo budget, right, because we have a revenue issue, and a cost issue, a budget issue. One of the issues I'd love to see is the actual restructuring of this agreement, because essentially when I looked into the budgets, I looked into the city of Rochester's budget. So the city of Rochester, I think, is a good comparable because it's the closest large city in the state. I think Buffalo and Rochester, we typically think of our same as we're both Western New York. I think we're right. You couldn't think of a more similar city to Buffalo than Rochester, and vice versa. So actually, when you look at they have a completely different sales tax structure with their county, right? Because Monroe County is different. So Monroe County, right? They have the same thing. They have the 4% goes to the state, and then Monroe County sales tax is also 4%. So actually, the sales tax in Rochester and Monroe is 8%, which is 0.75% less than Erie County, and it's been in effect since 1993. So they have their own agreement, and kind of this is the breakdown of their county sales tax agreement. So they have 31% of sales tax in Monroe County goes to the city of Rochester. Then they have 21% to towns. The county holds 31%. So yeah, this is their distribution. And I think the big thing here is that it's different than ours in the city of Buffalo. And yeah, they have different kind of formulas, but essentially, I mean, the big thing to know, or I think the big takeaway, at least after researching it, so yeah, really the big thing I think to take away is that, right, Erie County has a higher sales tax rate than Monroe County. They take in more sales tax revenue than Monroe County, but yet when it comes to distributing that, the city of Buffalo gets less in sales tax from the county than the city of Rochester does in Monroe County. So I think one of the structural issues that I think, right, a strong mayor could bring to this office is actually renegotiating the sales tax agreement with the county. And right, just that statement, and I'm not too plugged into county politics, the politics of the sales tax agreement, right? But that is opening up, I think that would open up a hornet's nest, right? Because I think there had been some articles of actual Mayor Byron Brown had brought this up a couple times. And right, and obviously the immediate knee-jerk reaction from the county and from everyone is kind of this mentality of, right, we have a fixed pie, everybody gets a little bit of slice of the pie, and if City of Buffalo gets more, I get less, and that type of thing. And I couldn't even imagine, right, and I'm sure, and I'm just really doing a surface level analysis of the agreement. I'm sure if you got into the weeds and were breaking down, right, what each municipality was getting, it's money. And I think especially in the environment we are now in the economy where, right, everyone's struggling with inflation, not just individual consumers and homeowners, but yeah, governments, county, city governments, were all strapped for cash. And it would definitely disrupt kind of the status quo. But I think, right, when the city of Buffalo is looking at a budget that is fundamentally broken, it needs to kind of be reconsidered. This agreement could be reworked to be something more modern and just be different. I think the agreement in 1977, the 1977 sales tax agreement, it actually here in some of the reporting I saw with the Buffalo News, it actually said that where's the language? It says, so actually this clause here, it says, now therefore it is agreed by the parties as follows, that the cities of Buffalo, Lackawanna, and Tonawanda, the duration of this agreement will not exercise their several rights to enact a city sales tax. So I believe in some of the reporting that I had read too is that actually cities have the right to actually issue their own sales tax, or actually, and I don't know how it works if they can opt out, but essentially a city does have a little bit of power if they could actually have their own city sales tax. And I don't know. I think it needs more study of what that would look like, how that would affect. I think some of the reporting I saw was that wouldn't be a good move for the city because, right, if the city opted out into its own sales tax, right, a lot of the major purchases, so just think of like, right, Wegmans. Wegmans is one location in the city, or even like, right, car dealerships. All the car dealerships, major ticket transactions are located in the suburbs, and the city wouldn't get some of that revenue. And right, this would take a lot more deep dive studying and auditing to actually figure out. But I think it's an interesting idea, especially with kind of where I live. Like there's actually the reservation is a gas station, and it is 24/7. I joke you not, always packed. And I could get into how the parking lot there is poorly designed because there's always cars there, right? Partly because they don't pay state tax, so it's really the only place in the city where you can get really cheap gas because you're not paying city county tax on the gas. And I don't know, it's interesting, especially when the city is right. The city is struggling financially. Could a new mayor, could they actually, what leverage do they have, right? If this, and I don't know what the effects of having our own city sales tax, or if you could opt out. But I think one thing is clear that, and it's complicated too, because right, the county government in Erie and the county government in Monroe County, they subsidize the city government in different ways. So for example, right, the county is paying for NFTA, and NFTA is a county service, but really, right, a lot of the NFT lines actually service the city of Buffalo, right? A lot of the bus routes, the metro rail is in the city. And I even think things like in Rochester, the water authority is under city control, where in the city of Buffalo, it's kind of run by Viola. So there's like all these intricacies of it's not apples to apples, right? But I think it is important just to realize that the city of Rochester is getting substantially more in sales tax revenue than the city of Buffalo is. And I think when you look at their budget, so I actually have their budgets here. This is the budget line for city of Rochester sales tax revenue from their county. So in the proposed 25 budget, they had proposed or projected to get over $200 million in sales tax revenue from their county. But then when you look at so this is the city of Buffalo's sales tax revenue. When you look at their budget line, so they have this Erie County sales tax in their budget. They only projected for fiscal year 25 $113 million here. So this is fiscal year 25. So almost a gap or a difference in, what is that, 60 or a little, 80 million. It's a substantial sum of money. So especially when the city of Rochester has less population, it's something that could be, and I think needs to be negotiated. And I think, one way that obviously doesn't work for the city of Buffalo is this 1%, right? I think this additional 1%, right? Especially, I think the big things that this can of worms would open up is, right, if the city of Buffalo said, hey, I want more money, every town in village also wants more money too. And the ultimate defense would be like, well, you're not taking money from me. But I think it's important to realize that this extra 1%, so essentially a penny on every dollar, none of that goes specifically to the city of Buffalo or cities. And I think that's right. Or this 0.75% on top, 75 on top that goes directly to the county of Erie. So yeah, I think there's, I don't know, it's interesting. And like in a negotiation, there's anything. I don't know how that would work, but obviously it hasn't been updated since 1977. And I think when you think about just the economy, we all know that the economy has changed drastically just since 2017, let alone 1977. I think it's just an interesting, and it's something, it's the elephant in the room that I haven't seen any mayor candidates seriously address. I think there's some platitudes towards, right, budget, revenues, whatnot, but I don't think I've seen anyone take a specific stance on the sales tax. And I don't know, maybe, and right, it would take more research, but would opting out and just enforcing a city sales tax, would that make sense? I don't know. I think that's something for the people running and for us as a region to consider the ramifications of that. But I don't know. I think it's just something that, right, when we're in the hole that we are, I think everything needs to be on the table, and especially when we talk about revenues. And actually, Acting Mayor Scanlon had mentioned, and Byron Brown had mentioned that this is an issue because the city of Buffalo just isn't getting the type of sales tax revenue from the county that similar municipalities are. So that's kind of the deep dive into sales tax revenue. Seeing if I left anything out here, but I think it's I don't think it's something that we think about, but obviously it matters. You know, I think especially if we're in the city of Buffalo, I know One of the other issues on the revenue side is the actual city's tax structure. So I know one thing I'm particularly kind of concerned about is just the amount of exemptions. So there's a lot of high value properties on the city tax roll that don't pay any taxes at all because they have either payment in lieu of taxes or they have, they have just different exemptions. And I think, I mean, a good concrete example is the Harbor Center downtown. They I think are valued at $44 million, and yet that building does not pay a dollar in tax to the city of Buffalo. And especially when you think about a hot dog, so you buy an overpriced hot dog or an overpriced beer, and that sales tax revenue, right? Some of it's going to the city, but that 1%, that 0.75%, none of that money is going to the city. And it just matters. I think it's just something that, needs to be reconfigured and renegotiated. And I'm not sure how that would be done or what exactly the nuance of it, but I think it's something that needs to be openly discussed in the mayor's race. So that's a deep dive discussion into municipal tax structures and controversies. And I hope you found that enlightening. And I think I'm interested in seeing some more of these. I'll probably do some more on these actual lines. I know one concern I have is this actual federal revenue stimulus, which line on the city budget, which this line right here, I believe is the American Rescue Plan. And I think the cities, they've allocated in their official ARPA plans, like 170 or 160-ish million dollars in revenue replacement. But then when you add these numbers up on the budget, they don't add up. So I know personally I'm interested in auditing the ARPA money because I think I still don't think people know what the actual allocations are. And the city has a bunch of different budget lines. So drop a comment either on the live stream or on the video and let me know what you think, and maybe I'll be covering that in future shows. So let's move on now to essentially I wanted to kind of paint a picture. I don't know, a mental picture, but I think building off of the just discussion we had around, I think, budgets. And I think one of the things that's been, on my mind lately, especially as we're in this moment in the mayor's race, where we're just radically rethinking, what leadership or what the city's future looks like. And I wanted to kind of just think about how Buffalo could be positioned as a new financial capital of New York State. And I know that sounds radical, right? I think at this moment of time, as I record this in 2025, right, the city of Buffalo is known for, right, we have one of the highest poverty levels in the nation. We have, right, potholes everywhere. The city is bankrupt. We don't have really any money, or we're about to run out of money here. And while that might be the current situation, it hasn't always been true, right? If you rewind 100 years ago, or you just look at our city hall, that was built at a point in time where the city of Buffalo was one of the richest cities in the United States. I don't know if it's completely true, but it's folklore at this point, right? I think they said at that point in time, the city of Buffalo had the highest millionaires per capita. And I don't know if that's true. I don't have data to back that up, but that's like the folklore, right? And even you look on Delaware, there's mansions everywhere, just houses that people lived in. I think even as I saw an interview again on Channel 4 about Sean Ryan, he was talking about how, we need to look to the state funding going there. And I think I would like to think, or at least positive theory of maybe a new way forward. I think, right, for so long we've kind of been, right, we're called the Queen City, and especially being on the western terminus of the city, we're so far away from like the current financial epicenter of New York State, which is right, Wall Street is Manhattan, and the policy made in Albany. And that's kind of the current situation. But I really hope that, and I really want the city of Buffalo to start looking, right, I think we should raise our gaze northward towards our neighbor in the north, Toronto. So I think we have a really strategic position. I have this logo here of ETH Toronto. So what is ETH Toronto? So for those of you who don't know, right, obviously crypto AI technology is overtaking, right? It's changing the fabric. I mean, here I am, not channel 2, not channel 4, not channel 7, just some guy with a mic talking about how I feel on the internet, right? That's something that couldn't have been thought about not that long ago. I think in Buffalo, it's really hard to kind of think, but actually in Toronto, which is right a 2-hour drive if you drive fast on the QEW, it's closer to us than actual New York City. And I think we're very fortunate, especially when it comes to crypto. Of actually, we are at essentially the epicenter of Ethereum. So Ethereum is the number 2 at this moment market cap cryptocurrency, and it's right. Cryptocurrency is its own universe of things. I think traditionally, obviously, most people are familiar with Bitcoin, which I think at this point has proven or has a track record of a store of value. But Ethereum is the number 2 cryptocurrency, and essentially what it did and what it strives to be is kind of taking the blockchain technology around Bitcoin and said, how can we, apply this blockchain to other problems? So Ethereum's big thing that they came up with was smart contracts. And actually, Ethereum, right? It's the number 2 cryptocurrency in the world. It was developed and invented by Vitalik Buterin, who was, I think, at that time a student at Waterloo University, right up the road from us. And there's this thriving ecosystem of crypto and Ethereum right to our north, 2 hours to our north. And I think what we're slowly seeing here, in my theory of kind of the world, I think especially right we're in this middle of this technological shift of we're experiencing AI. I think crypto is one of the most understood, but will be one of the most important inventions of our lifetime. And I think, we're so fortunate. We are the closest American city to Toronto, right? We have this whole ecosystem. I know one thing I'm interested, there's actually this Consensus 2025 conference happening in Toronto in May, where you're going to have, industry leaders from the crypto industry, inventors, tinkerers, innovators, right to our northern neighbor, just 2 hours from our borders. And I think Buffalonians, we don't typically think of ourselves as an international city, which doesn't make any sense, right? We are literally from City Hall. You can see Canada. You can see an international border. We are an international border with Canada, and I think, as I think what we're seeing, in slow, I think there's a term in crypto called gradually then suddenly. We're in this moment where actually the epicenter of the financial universe, which has traditionally been Wall Street in our lifetimes, Wall Street is Wall Street. We all know what it is. It's the major banks, major corporations, and I think a lot of the policy from Albany, it obviously is massively influenced by Wall Street and the power in New York City, which is okay. I understand that, but I think often in Buffalo we don't get. We're just kind of this forgotten stepchild. I know, me personally, I'm kind of tired of being what appears to be kind of the state's backdoor, that they do kind of these failed economic development. I don't want to call them corrupt, but the Buffalo Billion, which was Governor Cuomo's major economic development. Where is that Buffalo Billion? We have potholes, and none of that $1 billion went to fill potholes. But I think just as our time, and I think there's a theory in crypto too, that we're kind of having this decentralization. You're having this moment in time where actually some municipalities are going to do poor, others are going to do well and ascend. And I think Buffalo, with our strategic position so close to the epicenter of Ethereum, really has a chance to rebuild and rebrand ourselves as the financial capital of New York State. And I think, New York State, I've done some content on this past, but New York State actually has some of the most oppressive crypto regulations in the entire world. And I'm not over exaggerating. When you log into a lot of the user agreements on crypto sites, it says we do not service customers in Iran, Iraq, Eastern Ukraine, and New York State. We're always just thrown in with, or in North Korea, we're thrown in there with what Americans think of as these horribly oppressive regimes. That ultimately comes down to New York State's bit license regulation. So I think it was 2013 or maybe 2015, somewhere around that time, when crypto was first invented, and obviously the policy players in Wall Street and Albany saw this as a threat to their power, and seeked, I think New York State's goal is to be, the best regulator of crypto. Then on the other end of that, you have this crypto movement, really, which is open source, and it is growing, and honestly, it attracts. And I think the it just attracts, right, innovators, creative thinkers, visionaries. They're working in crypto. They're not working for finance, Wall Street banks on legacy systems. And I think one of the things about crypto is it's kind of, I think Buffalo, maybe it's our arts and culture. We just kind of have like a weird vibe, and I mean that in a right, in a good way. We have this kind of character that I would love to see us potentially, just leverage. And I think, I just hope, I hope, and I think Buffalo has an opportunity to, if we just gaze northward, we can potentially set ourselves up as an international city and potentially leverage our location close to the epicenter of Ethereum. I think many other cities between that and I think our freshwater location really opens us to some potential like sustainable, renewable mining of Bitcoin. I know one idea I would love to see explored would be actual Bitcoin mining at the sewer authority plant. Right, we have these water that's always flowing, that is flowing and generating power, whether we leverage and capture it or not. Could that be used as one to mine Bitcoin to generate wealth for the region and potentially used as an economic incentive to clean the water and build a kind of economy over the water? And I think we have such a good geostrategic location, whether it's crypto, whether it's global warming, to actually have, with all our fresh water and kind of this new economy that's being built, whether you want to believe it or not. We have, I think, a good opportunity to hopefully leverage that. And I would love to see perhaps a mayoral candidate, or I would love to see some of our leaders kind of start to think differently about what the city of Buffalo could be. Because I've even seen some of the mayoral candidates, all they can really think about is what has been, and going and asking the state for more money. And one of the issues I didn't cover in the budget overview was actually the state AIM funding. So the city has actually had one of the major parts of our budget is state AIM funding, and that has stayed relatively flat for like almost a decade. So we really, the advantage of being a part of New York State just doesn't always seem to flow directly to the residents of Buffalo and us on our western terminus. So that's kind of I don't know if it's a ranting or raving or a vision, but just something that I wanted to bring to our leaders' attention and potentially the region, of just opening up our eyes to the potential of what our region could be, which is, I truly think we could become the new financial center of New York State if we adopted favorable and maybe even almost became like a sanctuary city for crypto innovation. Because right now, especially with the BitLicense, you had a lot of really innovative companies and developers flee New York State because it's so oppressive to do business and innovate in crypto and AI in New York State, and that's just kind of ultimately that's the reality of the economic landscape we live in. Is if you're not treated well in a municipality or a state, a dev with a laptop can just go plug in right to municipalities that quote unquote get it, whether that's Texas, Wyoming, some of the international students. And I think as I try to explain crypto, Bitcoin, but also crypto to friends and families, and a lot of my friends and family we're American, so there's a whole deprogramming that you have to do before you can understand it. Where one of the things that I try to explain, and one of the reasons we're at a disadvantage of, right? If you are, I don't know, a migrant in eastern Ukraine and you're fleeing a war-torn zone, no one needs to explain to you, why Bitcoin or why crypto is better. You just intuitively understand it because you went to the bank and your bank isn't letting you withdraw your rubles or your currency. And I think even in Africa, I think you're seeing radical innovation because there's this theory that there's almost going to be like a leapfrogging. So you're going to have underdeveloped nations, right? There are nations, right? And we come from a very privileged point of view, being Americans, right? We have the world reserve currency. It's been that way since the end of World War II. And I think if you spoke to most Americans, they just think that it's always going to be that way. But it's kind of hard to put ourselves in another shoe of other countries that don't essentially like that agreement. And I think yeah, it's kind of hard to explain to Americans, and especially the closer you are to the power, right? So the closer you are to New York City or the U.S. dollar, the less you want to believe, the less your mind's open to different ways of doing things. But there is a whole economy, and I worry that the economy that we're in 2025, that is still operating like it's 1984, is not going to be the same in 2084, and we need to start building the new economy. Whether that's crypto, whether that's AI. I think the new economy is technology. It's innovation. It's it's radically different than how it is now. And I think one of my concerns too is just that our economy, right after whether it's NAFTA or just globalization, where right the city of Buffalo's major economy was manufacturing, and all those jobs went offshore. It seems like a lot of our economy is just government work and healthcare, and even in healthcare, it's not actually providing service in healthcare. It's actually just doing bureaucratic paperwork within the healthcare industry. So I think there's just a need to reposition and modernize the economy. And I think we're just so fortunate to be so close to literally the epicenter of this new world that's being built, and I would love to see our city take advantage of that location. And I think the first step you could do that is just being a welcoming city to innovation. So that's kind of a rant and rave. But I got about 5 minutes here, and we got a comment here from not too sure who that is, but maybe I'll close here with some Buffalo Bills commenting. So I think right now we're in NFL draft season. So I think the scouting combine just is wrapping up, or we just happened out. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Bills and just kind of how that's going. So I think we just recently re-signed Khalil Shakir to a new contract. I think it was nothing too radical. I think it was around $15-16 million a year, which sounds expensive, but Khalil Shakir plays a premium position, which is wide receiver. So I think ultimately it's a good signing. I think it's good anytime you can draft and develop your own players. So obviously Khalil Shakir was drafted by the Bills in the 5th round, and then is now being re-signed to a second contract is excellent. I think that helps just build your culture, right? If you're coming in through a team and you see the team retain guys and get rewarded with their play in the field, it just helps build that culture in the locker room. So really excited to see him. Because I think he's at this point he's proven he's an excellent number 2 receiver. I don't know if he's a number 1, although he plays like it sometimes. But it's great to have Khalil Shakir in roster. And we just have some breaking news, which I don't know if this is credible, but it is because I'm saying it now. The Bills parted ways with Von Miller. So do we have any thoughts about that from the Think Twice radio?
Yeah, my friend sent me a little Facebook video. If you want, I'll send it to you. But, Von Miller, they said, you tried very hard to get back to your Super Bowl form, but we're sorry, it just didn't work out. So there's that. And then on the New York Times sports page today, they sent a reporter down to Cleveland. And they said, have you changed your mind about trading for teams that want Myles Garrett? And Cleveland's response was very interesting. They said, no, we are going to be the ones to re-sign Myles Garrett. However, if we change our mind, I can tell you that the Bills and the Eagles are making some very attractive offers.
Nice. Well, yeah, I think the Von Miller, I think it was very clear that didn't work out as we hoped. So I think it really does help save roster space, salary cap space, which I think, and I could see us maybe perhaps restructuring. And I think the Von Miller signing is kind of tricky because it was clearly the right thing to do. I think we needed an elite pass rusher. He's clearly kind of the missing piece. It just didn't work out how we did. And I think obviously the knee injury was unfortunate, and he was never really the same player after that. So it's kind of a situation where I think it was the strategy was right, but the execution wasn't so. And unfortunately, I think the biggest concern I have as a Bills fan is it really, since our first AFC championship, the problem's been the defensive line, and I think the management has realized that. Right, we've invested a lot of draft capital, whether it's Greg Rousseau in the first round, Epineza and Boogie Basham, who ended up trading both second round picks, the Von Miller signing. We've deployed so much capital into that position group, and just really have not had the results that you would hope. But I am optimistic because it's clear that the regime understands that is the thing. So unfortunately, you just got to keep taking swings till you'll miss. So we'll see. Do we get Myles Garrett? I think we do need an elite pass rusher. And I think he would kind of be our Bruce Smith. So I'm all for that. And I think, especially now, it feels like we're halfway through Josh Allen's career. We need to start kind of pressing with this new core. So I'd love to see us go a little, go all in to get a pass rush. Because I think besides quarterback, really on the defensive side, is you need somebody that can get to the quarterback. And I think that's just been the big takeaway, especially the contrast of Mahomes playing us in this AFC Championship game, just carved us up, hit all the time, but then he went to the Eagles and he was just had no time at all. And it just was really stark of, okay, that's where we need to improve as the defensive side of the ball. And I think, they call him Big Baller Bean for a reason. Of he clearly takes swings and he's not afraid to make a mistake. And I think that's what you got to have. I think he's an excellent general manager. I think he's right. It's the same thing with McDermott. He's just a little bit behind Howie Roseman, who's the Eagles player. And I would love to see, I think, as far as draft strategy, I think past couple drafts have seemed to focus on positions of need. And I think I'd love to see us just adopt a best player available. So it seems like every year there's players that draft down the board, and I'd love to see us scoop one of those guys up, even if it's a position we don't necessarily need. Because ultimately, I think when it gets to the Super Bowl, it's, as the Eagles prove it, if you have a talented roster that kind of overtakes the coaching and the schematics. So thanks for tuning in, and hopefully you learned something exciting. And till next week, this is Austin Audits, and now we fade to darkness.